Hey, it's Joe Bartel from Rotowire, and we're talking about the three players that I think are going to dramatically outperform expectations entering week 2. This week, I think JK Dobbins is going to be a fantasy darling for a lot of folks. And we're talking about running back 2, low end running back 1 spots, fair play fantasy-wise. But against this Panthers defense without Derek Brown, I think that Chargers offense and rushing attack in particular will be great. You could say Gus Edwards in this equation. I think that makes total sense. But Dobbins was the one that was electric. A carry of 46 yards, a carry of 61 yards. Yes, he got tackled from behind in both of those. But I thought that was as vintage rookie JK Dobbins as we've seen in some time. And more importantly, that offense wants to get him more involved. Josh Palmer, the stud receiver for the Chargers, was a limited participant in both Wednesday and Thursday's practice, downgraded to a DNP Friday. So it's likely going to be Lab McConkey, Quentin Johnston, some combination of Brendan Rice or Darius Davis as your wide receiver 3. We know the Chargers don't want to pass the ball, but they certainly don't want to if Josh Palmer is out. And I don't think the Panthers offense is going to score enough points to really make a difference. So I think J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards get enough carries where they're both running back 2 relevant, if not flex plays. And I would love to have them each on my team and in my starting lineup this week. Another player that I love this week is Brock Bowers. And I understand the tight end position got ran over last week, whether you had Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, David Njoku. It was a bloodbath just across the board. But if you invested in Brock Bowers, or at least thought the rookie would look good, there was some signs of life for that pick. Led the team in targets with 8, got a lot of this production over the middle, and more importantly, the Raiders don't look like a very good team and will probably be trailing often. Yes, they have Devontae Adams for now and Jacoby Myers, and Gardner Minshew is not a very good quarterback. But if I'm saying what's a scenario that the Raiders will be in most of the year, it's probably down 2 scores after they've bludgeoned their head against the wall to no avail with Zamir White through the first half. And they're going to check the ball down to Brock Bowers, throw it in the middle, because defenses are going to concede that. I think Bowers this week against the Ravens is in a perfect spot. And yes, Roquan Smith is there, one of the better linebackers in the league. The Ravens scheme probably will take away some of Brock Bowers. That's the floor of Brock Bowers, that he gets 4 or 5 catches, 50 yards a game, and you're very happy with your 9 or 10 points in PPR leagues. Like, that's the floor. A ceiling scenario is one of the better tight ends we've seen in recent memory in college becoming the focal point for an offense, especially post Devontae Adams. And maybe that happens. Maybe there's a scenario in which the Raiders passing attack does improve. And I think that equation has to involve Brock Bowers. So I like him this week. And he's one of the few tight ends that I'll be going out and acquiring right now before his value gets too high in the coming weeks. If you like the content you're seeing on Rotowire, please hit the subscribe button or just like the video here. It does a lot for us as we're pushing on our YouTube channel. Again, rotowire.com/try gets you that 48-hour access to the site. No credit cards needed. You get to see all the different content, the weekly start, sit lineups, all the breaking news information happening minutes after it's been reported. My final player that I love this week is Tyler Johnson. And I understand there's a lot of uncertainty post Puka Nacua and now on injury reserve for the Rams. The deliberation between Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Winton's all fair. I don't know if we really know the answer, and unfortunately had to invest some sort of waiver priority in getting Tyler Johnson this week. This is a team a year ago that threw Puka Nacua into the fire. No concerns whatsoever. And what emerged was one of the best receiver seasons of all time, much less a rookie. And now we have a situation where Jordan Whittington, who went off in the preseason, is being discussed as if he is going to be the riser from this. And if that's the case, why didn't they trust Jordan Whittington in week 1? He only had 14 snaps. He had 1 scheduled target, which was a touchdown that was called back. But guys like Demarcus Robinson played 68 snaps post Puka Nacua's injury. Tyler Johnson was involved to that point as well. And I don't think the Rams are hiding things. If they like a player and think they work, they're going to put them in there right away. So Tyler Johnson, I'm just taking the Rams for what they did week 1 for face value. 5 catches, 70 plus yards, 7 targets. This was a guy from Minnesota that back in college was a really productive player. And I thought had opportunities in the NFL, especially with the Buccaneers, to be relevant fantasy factor too. This might be the offense and this might be the circumstance where he ends up being entirely fantasy relevant. And especially in deeper leagues, I think he produces wide receiver 3 numbers right out of the gate, especially against this bad Cardinals defense. And I'm going over my 3 players I hate for this weekend's games. We're starting first with Jayden Reed, who cropped up on the injury report Friday due to 2 lower body leg injuries. Now, that's not the only reason why, but if you have any opportunity to play just about every other receiver, I'd probably look that direction over Jayden Reed, who is, to be fair, the NFL's leading receiver after 1 week. Besides the injury factor for Jayden Reed, and again, limited participant in Friday's practice, showed up on the injury report Friday after not having any injury concerns Wednesday or Thursday. That's normally notable. Malik Willis, theoretically, your starting quarterback for the Packers in week 2, has completed just 35 total passes across his entire career. That's 5 games played of 15 or more snaps, including 3 starts, and he's completed just 35 passes total. I think Matt LaFleur is one of the better coaches in the NFL and certainly one of the better offensive schemers. But I also think Mike Vrabel is a really good coach and knows what he's doing. And he's taken multiple starts with Malik Willis and said, I want that guy to throw the ball as little as possible. Maybe Jayden Reed gets involved with every gimmicky play I imagine Matt LaFleur can muster. Bubble screens, reverses. There's ways to manufacture touches without exposing Malik Willis's inability to pass the ball. But needless to say, the entire Packers offense, I think, is going to look brutal if Malik Willis is your starting quarterback in week 2 against the Colts. I'd find any other options like Lab McConkey or Jameson Williams or even Michael Wilson, your number 2 receiver for the Cardinals. There's a lot of guys out there over Jayden Reed instead. Along the same lines of players that I hate this week, it's George Pickens. Now, I loved George Pickens entering draft season. I thought he was going to be the primary receiver, and the moonball specialist Russell Wilson himself was going to love George Pickens. Well, it's likely week 2 for Justin Fields as your starting quarterback for the Steelers. And I know Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh, said he wasn't throwing in the middle of the field because he was worried about the Falcons' Jesse Bates in week 1. That statement might be true by Arthur Smith, but I also think having Justin Fields throw in the middle of the field isn't so much a concern of Jesse Bates, but just general concerns about what could happen if Fields is off target. Think about it. If Fields throws a ball 5 yards over a designated receiver's head, which can happen. We saw that, Bears fans. We know what that looks like. Then you're going to have an interception or an incomplete pass or a possibility for tipped ball, yada, yada. If you're throwing towards the sidelines, like Justin Fields did in week 1, and I think will in week 2, the opportunity for a miscue is less, right? Out of bounds throw. If a ball is tipped, it would take a pretty miraculous effort for a defender to catch it. There's just less of a likelihood for a turnover or bad situation to arise. Can that happen still? Obviously. And I think Justin Fields will throw in the middle of the field more often in the coming weeks, even if it just means one more attempt. But in the same token, George Pickens is going to be shadowed by Patrick Surtain, and Surtain is already one of the best cover corners in the league. Now you're adding a potential tip to the offense where he can play Pickens to the sideline, and it makes me very nervous. The Steelers can and probably will win this game if they get the ball past the 50-yard line, have Boswell kick his 6 field goal attempts like he did last week, and they hold Bo Nix to doing nothing because he's not a very good quarterback. That makes me very nervous that George Pickens doesn't have to do a whole lot of fantasy output in order for the Steelers to win, and it's why I'm fading him really outside of that wide receiver 3 in flex range this week. Finally, the last player that I hate for this week is Jaylen Warren, sticking in Pittsburgh. And it's not that I think Jaylen Warren is a bad player, nor do I think the scheme for Arthur Smith won't get him involved at some point, but it's very clear the Steelers wanted to work him back from the hamstring injury week 1 against the Falcons, only played 19 snaps. And again, it goes back to what I said for George Pickens. What's the likelihood, or what's the path to victory for the Steelers? Don't let Justin Fields make mistakes. Make sure Bo Nix can't throw the ball more than 3 yards. He won't, very clearly. And you're probably going to win, especially mile high with that air and Chris Boswell kicking the way that he has been. I think Jaylen Warren is going to get his snaps limited once again. It's going to be a heavy dose of Najee Harris on the ground. And you're going to see Jaylen Warren, who needs to have fantasy relevance as a pass-catching running back, in a game script where he's not going to have to catch passes. I think Jaylen Warren is a fine player in real life, matters a lot for that team and what they want to do on a week in and week out basis. But this is another week in which the Steelers are favored, should be favored heavily, and will likely have their defense win games. Not Jaylen Warren, not the passing attack, and they're not going to be trailing. So I have Jaylen Warren outside my top 30 running backs this week.